Hey there, second graders. This week we're skipping ahead a little bit in your journeys book and we're actually on to one of the last stories, which is on page 444, and it's called Two of Everything. So if we take a quick glance over here at the genre of this story, what type of story it is, it's a folk tale. So let's see what that is. It says, a folk tale is a story that is often told by people of a country. Use the genre to set a purpose for reading. So folk tales are stories that are passed down from generation to generation, and they're usually told within one culture. So maybe your great-great-grandma told the story originally, and then it got passed down and passed down. And that is what this one is. Folk tales aren't true, right? They are fiction stories. They're not real. And what our focus is for this week is about characters. And we have two main characters in our story that you will meet here shortly. Their names are Mrs. Hacktack and Mr. Hacktack. They are husband and wife. So as we read, I want you to kind of think about some of their character traits. And we've talked about character traits before. They are part of someone's personality. They are things on the inside, but they are things that you can't see. So as we read, we're going to kind of come up with some adjectives to describe them, some character traits, and that's also what you'll work on when you are finished. All right, page 444. Question, what clues help you understand a story character? All right, let's go ahead and get started on this page. Once long ago, in a humble little hut, lived Mr. Hacktack and his wife, Mrs. Hacktack. They were old and very poor. What little they ate came from their tiny garden. In a lucky year, when the harvest was plentiful, Mr. Hacktack had a little extra to take to the village. There he traded turnips, potatoes, and other vegetables for clothing, lamp oil, and fresh seeds. So let's think about, when do you think this story takes place? Do you think this is a story that takes place now or a story that took place a long time ago? And how can you tell? Probably a long time ago, right? And there are some clues that tell you, right? You can see their house in the picture, first of all. And then one thing he said kind of stuck out to me. He said he could get lamp oil. Now, do we put oil in our lamps? No, right? We actually just turn the lamps on. We have electricity. But back then, they didn't have that. All right, next page. One spring morning when Mr. Hacktack was digging in his garden, his shovel struck something hard. Puzzled, he dug deeper into the dark ground until he came upon an ancient pot made of brass. How odd, said Mr. Hacktack to himself, to think that I have been digging here all these years and never came upon this pot before. I will take it home. Maybe Mrs. Hacktack can find some use for it. So maybe I'm thinking of a character trait for Mr. Hacktack, right? He was digging and he found something, right? Did he just give up and just move on? No, he kept looking, right? So I would say Mr. Hacktack, here's a word for you. Let's see if you can figure it out. You know what that says? Curious, right? He wanted to figure out what was under the ground, and he dug up a big pot, and he's going to take it home to his wife. The pot was big and heavy for old Mr. Hacktack. As he stumbled along, his purse, which contained his last 5 gold coins, fell to the ground. He tossed it into the pot for safekeeping and staggered home. His wife greeted him at the door. Dear husband, what a strange pot! Mr. Hacktack explained how he found the pot. I wonder what we can do with it, said Mrs. Hacktack. It looks too large to cook in and too small to bathe in. See how big it is on his back? Carried it all the way home. What do you think they're going to do with this pot? Next page, we're on 450 now. As Mrs. Hacktack leaned over to peer into the pot, her hairpin, the only one she owned, fell in. She felt around in the pot, and suddenly her eyes grew round with surprise. Look, she shouted, I've pulled out 2 hairpins, exactly alike, and 2 purses too. Sure enough, The purses were identical, and so were the hairpins. Inside each purse were 5 gold coins. So what happened? First, he dropped in his purse, right, when he was carrying the pot, and then she dropped in her hairpin, and she reached in, and now there's 2 hairpins, and there's 2 purses with money in them. Mr. Hacktack was so excited, he jumped up and down. Let's put my winter coat inside the pot. If we are lucky again, the pot will make 2 coats, and then we will both stay warm. So into the pot went 1 coat, and out came 2 coats. They began to search the house and quickly put more things into the magical pot. If only we had some meat, wished Mr. Hacktack, or fresh fruit, or 1 delicious sweet cake. So what is that pot doing to everything that they put in it? Doubling things, right? So they put 1 thing in and 2 things come out. Next page. Mrs. Hacktack smiled. I know how we can get anything we want, she said. She put their 10 coins into 1 purse, then threw it into the pot. She pulled out 2 purses with 10 coins in each. What a clever wife I have, cried Mr. Hacktack. Each time we do this, we will have twice as much money as before. The Hacktacks worked late into the night, filling and emptying the pot until the floor was covered with coins. Look at all that money they've made. And I think Mr. Hacktack gave us a character trait for his wife. What did he say she was? Look back in your story. What did he say? He said that she was very clever, right? Because she was the one that thought of the idea to put more coins into the pot, right? Clever is kind of another word for smart, right? You could even put that with it. Clever and smart. She made them lots of money, didn't she? All right, next page, 453. Morning came and off went Mr. Hacktack with a long list of things to buy in the village. Instead of vegetables, his basket was full of gold coins. Mrs. Hacktack finished all of her chores and sat down to enjoy a cup of tea. She sipped her tea and admired the brass pot. Then, with a grateful heart, she knelt and embraced it. Dear pot, I do not know where you came from, but you are my best friend. She stooped over the pot to look inside. So she gave it a big hug. Is she feeling very thankful maybe or grateful? Right? At that very moment, Mr. Hacktack returned. His arms were so full of packages that he had to kick the door open. Bang! Mrs. Hacktack was so startled that she lost her balance and fell head first into the pot. What's going to happen to her? What happens when we put things in the pot? Now she fell in the pot. Mr. Hacktack ran over and grabbed his wife's legs. He pulled and tugged until she slid out onto the floor. But when he looked at the pot again, he gasped. 2 more legs were sticking straight out of it. Naturally, he took hold of the ankles and pulled. Out came a second person. She looked exactly like his wife. Now there's 2 Mrs. Hacktacks. Can we think of a character trait from Mr. Hacktack? He was able to pull his wife up out of the pot and his second wife now out of the pot. You think he's pretty strong? The new Mrs. Hacktack sat silently on the floor, looking lost. But the first Mrs. Hacktack cried, I am your one and only wife. Put that woman back into the pot right now. Mr. Hacktack yelled, No! If I put her back, we will have 2 women but 3. 1 wife is enough for me. He backed away from his angry wife. Uh-oh. And tripped and fell head first into the pot himself. What do you call someone that falls down easily or trips easily? Can you think of that word? You might be clumsy, right? Mr. Hack-Tack is kind of clumsy. He tripped and fell into the pot himself. Now what's going to come out of the pot? 2 Mr. Hack-Tacks, right? Both Mrs. Hack-Tacks rushed to rescue him. Each grasped an ankle, and together they pulled him out. There were 2 more legs in the pot, so they pulled out the other Mr. Hack-Tack too. Just what use does one Mr. Hack-Tack have for another? Mr. Hack-Tack cried angrily. This pot is not as wonderful as we thought it to be. Now even our troubles are beginning to double. But his wife had been thinking while he was yelling. Maybe his wife is coming up with a plan. Calm down, she said. It is good that the other Mrs. Hack-Tack has her own Mr. Hack-Tack. Perhaps we will become best friends. After all, we are so alike. He will be a brother to you, and she a sister to me. With our pot, we can make 2 of everything, so there will be plenty to go around. And that is what they did. The Hack-Tacks built 2 fine new homes. Each house had identical teapots, rice bowls, silk embroideries, and bamboo furniture. From the outside, the houses looked exactly alike. But there was one difference. Hidden in one house was a big brass pot. Of course, the Hack-Tacks were always very careful not to fall into it again. So they used their pot to help other people, right? So you might think of them as generous or helpful or maybe kind. And those can go over here too. Right? They both can be generous or helpful or kind because they used that pot, they made money, and they made a second home for their Mrs. Hack-Tack and Mr. Hack-Tack friends. The new Hack-Tacks and the old Hack-Tacks did become good friends. The neighbors thought that the Hack-Tacks had grown so rich that they decided to have 2 of everything, even themselves. And that's the end of our story this week. Now it is your turn to go back and read the story again. When you are finished in our Google Classroom, there's a little character traits Google Slides. You'll listen to a couple slides and then you'll fill out some character traits for Mrs. Hack-Tack and Mr. Hack-Tack, and then you'll have to go back in the book and find why they were clever or thankful or whatever ones you choose. There's also an optional writing prompt. Kind of a fun one. You get to imagine that you had one of those pots that doubled everything, and you can tell us what you would put into the pot. So what would you like to get doubled, and what would you definitely not put into the pot? So that might be a kind of fun one. Bye, second graders.